Welcome, welcome, my noble thespians and my happy troupe of theater trolls. I'm your host, Dawn Westbrook, the biggest troll of them all, with my glass of Chardonnay. I hope you'll join me with a glass of something. And for the next few minutes, we're going to focus on the craft of acting, the art of directing, and embracing the process of this crazy career in the theater. I have some wonderful interviews lined up in the coming weeks, and this week is no exception. But first, this week's podcast is being brought to you by the Martha Hill Newell Playwrights Fund, whose commitment is to both local and national playwrights, and holds the belief that the relevance and vitality of American theater depends on the continual infusion of new works.
That within the first 3 seconds of sitting in my chair, almost every woman would apologize to me for the way she looked.
Oh, I want to be her. I loved everything about her.
I heard from women in Iraq, in Kathmandu, South Africa, Russia, Mexico, Malaysia. The only illumination came from blinking neon silhouettes of ladies in heels grabbing their ankles. As we totally do, right, ladies? You should smile more. No! You should be happy with your pay you're getting.
No! It was exhilarating. I feel a lot more confident after watching that. I feel okay to say, I'm a leader.
1, 2, 3.
I am a leader.
We support you! During World War II, the men went to war, women went to work.
Woo!
But when the men came home, they wanted the jobs back. See, and they wanted the wives back at home. Boo. Is there a man who would like to come up here and tell the audience what I really mean?
Wow, wow, wow. Woo-hoo. Such great writing and so funny. And boy, you nailed it. And I am so glad that I got to see you. And it was a year ago. I looked it up. It was March of last year.
Yep, a little over a year ago.
I don't know why I was thinking it was like summer, you know? But it
wasn't. I don't know. Well, time has kind of stopped right now, so
yeah,
it's understandable. There's just a big chunk of time that's just disappeared from our lives.
It's definitely an interesting time right now.
Yes, it is for theater actors.
It is. It's crazy. Everything's just kind of at a standstill.
Yes,
Broadway announced today that they're closing till the beginning of the year. I kind of knew that. I'd heard it through the grapevine, but, you know, and then all of the regional theaters kind of follow behind that lead, you know. Mm-hmm. So no one's announced here in Richmond what they're doing, but that's some rough stuff.
It is some rough stuff. It's tough to hear. Glad somebody's made a decision. You know, I'm glad we're not all hanging on, waiting, wondering, is there going to be a fall? Are we going to be at risk? You know, all the logistical issues that we're dealing with right now. I'm glad the decision is at least made.
Wow. Well, I am so glad, Eva, that you are a guest. And my first question, darling,
Woo!
I have my glass of Chardonnay. What do you have?
I'm social distancing at my parents' right now. And I said, I'm about to go on a podcast. Can you pour me a glass of wine? I mean, I'm being so spoiled right now.
I was going to say, you've got little minions running around.
I was never a princess in my family. So I think this is a Pinot Grigio. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. Well, cheers to you, baby. And I'll see if I can get a little
Cheers to being a princess.
Cheers to being a princess.
In my 40s, finally. I am a princess in my 40s.
When was your birthday?
February 2nd, Groundhog's Day.
You're such a baby.
I feel great.
By like 17 years. So.
Oh, well, I mean, it's just awesome getting older. Isn't it?
It is. You know what it is? And one of the things, we'll talk about this later on about your show, is that it's okay to get older, and it's okay to look a little older, and it's okay for women to embrace that as opposed to fight against it. You know, your show, In My Chair, is.
Can I cough?
Yes.
My first sip went down the wrong tube.
So you don't have COVID-19.
Yeah, I've never swallowed spit so often down the wrong tube as when this COVID came out. Anytime I am out, I am swallowing down the wrong tube in public and scaring people. I have never swallowed spit down the wrong tube so often.
Well, you know, I've always thought you were a head turner, but now you're getting the head turns for the wrong reason, darling, because you are. People can't see you, but boy, guys, you've got to check out the Facebook page and see the video of how beautiful Eva is. And just, you are so great in this show that you wrote. When did you start writing In My Chair?
I started writing that the summer of 2016. I
Okay.
had been, so it all started with this TED talk that I did, this TEDx talk I did in the end of 2013. So I
Mm-hmm.
did this TED talk in TEDxRVA Women Talk. And it was a 10-minute talk that I wrote, and that went viral.
So you started writing this in 2016.
2016, it was inspired from the talk in 2013. And then, so when I did this talk in 2013, I started having to do, people started asking me to do like hour-long versions of it, which
Okay.
basically for me, I was never a quote unquote speaker before. So I just did I called it like my little mini one-person show, and I would do it for organizations, or I would start speaking. So basically, I started working on little parts of it
Mm-hmm.
after my TED talk went viral, because companies would want an hour or organizations would want an hour. So little parts of it I started working on. And then when I got a commission and really started to decide to go around the world and raise the funds, and partnered up with Virginia Repertory Theater New Plays Fund and New Plays Division, that is when I just made the decision to really write. So that was the summer of 2016.
And so In My Chair, for those people that haven't seen the show, and I'm telling you what, how long did it run? Was it like not the length of like March through, the end of March? What is the running time of it?
95 minutes.
Okay. And you did an intermission?
No.
You did not.
Nope.
Okay. I couldn't remember if you did an intermission or not, but
that's the new thing, baby. No intermissions.
Keep it
Nobody
going.
wants an intermission. Let's keep it moving.
Start them early. Start
it early. Yes, exactly.
Start them early and get them out.
Serve them wine. Give them what they want, and then get them out. And that's it. Yeah, 95 minutes, no intermission. And everybody kept saying to me, "Don't do an intermission."
Yeah, one person shows, it's a little hard to kind of get it going again, But so 2013, 2016, where was the TED Talk that you did? Was it in Richmond?
That was in Richmond, yes. Which, again, one of the best things that I ever did in my life was leave New York City and move to Richmond. I say it all the time. Ken Burns, the documentarian, the famous documentarian in the world, he says he could not have been Ken Burns if he had not left New York City.
Right. It's one of the reasons I left.
His first documentary that he got the funds raised for was about the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yes.
And he couldn't finish it. He had to leave and move to way out in New Hampshire, where he still lives today, because he could afford it. So for me, my entire life and career, so much of it took off when I was in a smaller market, and I found a community.
Yeah, I love being kind of a big fish in a small pond. I'll take it any day,
Yep.
It's comfortable. You get to have, you're in Florida right now, correct?
I am in Florida.
And what city?
Venice, Florida.
Wow, that doesn't suck. If you've got to be quarantined, go be with your parents, be a princess, and get them to bring you wine, and peel a grape for you and pop it in your mouth, and stay down there and be under a palm tree, right?
Yes, and that's what I'm doing. I mean, we are eating, we say this every night, we are eating better than I think anybody. We eat so well every night.
Yeah, groceries have kind of gone up a little bit in cost, but they call it the COVID-19 for a reason. I mean, the scale has climbed. I'm getting close to the 19. I haven't gotten there yet, but boy, oh boy, I tell you what.
Bring it on. We all need it. Whatever comfort and self-care that we can bring ourselves right now.
Well,
you got to do it. You got to do it.
It is. And, I am speaking of In My Chair, and it's about, you realize, and I'll come back to this in a minute, about as you age, and if you have a little weight on you, remind me to give you something, to tell you something about that. But In My Chair is about, it evolved because why? Tell the listeners how it came to be.
Yeah. So this TED Talk was about radical self-acceptance. I'm a makeup artist, and I realized within the first 3 seconds of sitting in my makeup chair, almost every woman would apologize to me for the way she looked. And this is transgender, cisgender, female identifying women would apologize. And, about the way their skin, their hair, oh, sorry, I've got wrinkles. You got a good luck putting any makeup on me. And I realized I do the same exact thing.
Yes.
So I talked about this in a TED Talk. I heard from women all over the world who said, oh my gosh, I apologize too. All over, every continent, almost,
Unbelievable.
except Antarctica. Except
No penguins. No penguins said,
No
I'm
penguins.
sorry. I'm sorry I don't look as good as I did yesterday, but my
I
texture's
mean,
just the same.
they're just perfect, those penguins.
Immediately the first thing they would do is apologize.
Right. And so I finally, after hearing this TED Talk and hearing from everybody, I reached back out to so many of them through Twitter, through Facebook, through the internet, and made
Right.
real authentic connection over the internet, and decided to raise the money and actually meet them face to face. So I physically took my makeup chair around the world to 8 countries, 44 days, to have these women sit in my chair and interview them, research this experience of women around the world.
Did you record while they were sitting in the chair so you could go back and kind of look at it and relive it? Or did you just,
Yes,
how
so
that
that was part of it. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. So lucky was able to bring a cinematographer. His name is Matt Polson. So lucky that he came around the world, and it was not a bad gig for him as well. And we got to record everything. So really we have archival footage, which is just beautiful as well.
Wow, that's fantastic. Because I know on the back of the set, on the back wall, there were pictures of women and kind of like a collage. It was really wonderful. What were some of the countries that you went to?
I went to the island of Nevis down in the Caribbean. I went to Ireland, England. Where did I go? Thailand, Malaysia.
Wow. And that's
Colombia,
amazing.
Canada. Yep.
How did you pick those places? Did you decide you wanted to go there, or was there a reason why you chose those?
It was pretty intuitive as far as who reached out, really wanted to share their story, and where it just was kind of where the energy was pulling me.
Right.
Malaysia certainly was a big one, because this was a photographer in Malaysia. Her name is Shuhada. Hi, Shuhada, if you're listening. She tweeted about my TED Talk, and a lot of them came that way. And then I would see that, oh my gosh, somebody in Malaysia tweeted in Kuala Lumpur. And so I would tweet them back. And if I felt like a rapport, I just thought, and then she had a website. So she was like official. You know, you could do stalking, and you could stalk people all over the world. So that's what I would do. And then I would lie to them and say, like, I'm doing just a book, and I would love to talk with you and do some Skyping. So then we would Skype.
Right.
Eventually I'm doing a book.
You are doing a book, right? We talked about that.
It's just chronologically I was a little bit off. But then I would like get along with them. We would Skype, and then I would say, can I come? let's create something. And that's what happened with almost everybody.
That's amazing.
We created within Malaysia, it was a 2-day. I would do a talk one day, and I would do a photo shoot the other day, and do women's makeup, entrepreneurial Muslim women's makeup.
That's amazing. Did Matt also, was he also the photographer as opposed to the video?
No, he did do some photography.
Okay.
Yes, we had 2 cameras,
Right.
but she was the photographer. So she's the one that she does women's portraits, so headshots.
Oh my goodness.
So I did the makeup all day for this incredible organization, all these entrepreneurial women wearing hijabs. I had all this bias.
That was my takeaway. That, and how do I define beautiful? Those were my 2 takeaways, because those were I have other things too, we'll talk about too, but introspectively, when I left, I just sat there when it was over, in the chair, just in my chair, not in your chair, in my chair. And I was, it's that burqa and hijab, and you immediately think women's rights. You immediately think, I'm from America, and we don't do that, and we don't cover up like that. And so for me, when I actually have, and my husband can attest to this, a visceral feeling when I see women dressed like that. Up to your show, and ever since your show, I don't have it anymore. I look at it in a totally different way, because what you said is like, just say salam. Is that what you say? Just say salam.
That's what Shuhada said. That's what she told me, because I was like, what do I do? What do I do when I have that same feeling,
right,
Dawn? When I'm afraid that a woman is not empowered by covering up? What do I say? And that's exactly what she said.
But what you describe in the show, if I'm remembering correctly, Eva, is that it's not disempowering. How does the character describe not the burqa, but the hijab? It's something almost beautiful. Do you remember exactly? You don't have to quote it, but it's something about how it's not what you think. It's something that we get to do, that we like to do. It was something like that. I mean, I can't remember exactly the quote, but can you expand on that a little bit?
It's interesting because there is a bit of ambiguity there. So when I asked her, I said, I was very worried. One of the women there, I said, do you feel empowered wearing a hijab? And she said, I feel very empowered wearing a hijab because I have my own business. Here she is, an entrepreneurial woman.
Right.
She can drive. And she said that wearing a hijab is a choice that she makes. She doesn't have to do it. Wearing a hijab is a choice to help with the male gaze, men looking at them, feeling tempted by them, harassing them on the street. And it's also, the Quran tells them to wear the hijab.
So part of the introspection, the journey for me in your show was that moment about the choice.
Right.
Now in some countries, it's not a choice. Let's just say that out loud, correct? But it's unfortunate. And so the takeaway was huge for me when I saw your show. Huge.
Well, I tried to talk about that in my show. I talk about my own programming and bias and xenophobia and how I'm still completely scarred from living in New York City during 9/11 and being there for 12 years. And,
you were there.
Yeah, I was there for 9/11. It was a day I'll never forget. But I think that it's important. It was so important to me if I'm going to talk about, go to these different cultures, go to these different places in these countries to talk about that feeling of that knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, Muslim majority country, scary. I did get swept away with being afraid. Initially, I wasn't, because she was so wonderful and we would talk and it felt very comfortable. But after everybody kept saying, be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful. And the Muslim ban had just happened, the first one. I got very, very nervous and worried.
I remember just when you took off. I remember when you left and you came back and then you went out again, I believe. It wasn't just a one, like you did the jaunt. The plane goes from one place to the next and you come back in a circle. It was, you came back to Richmond and then went back out again, didn't you?
Okay. Just the first. So the show is a little bit out of order, which of the way that I went. It's an interesting thing, dramaturgically, it's what works dramaturgically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So some of the countries,
dramatic license, darling, dramatic license.
Exactly. And some of the most incredible things that happened on my journey, I could only put 95 minutes in. So I had to kind of work how it went dramaturgically and where the arc is.
Sure.
And some of the most incredible stories didn't get put in. So that's why also this book is expounding upon the journey, is getting all the stories in.
So you traveled and, Mark Delabar, who's week 5, who I just posted today, he talked about that everybody, what they ask now is, first of all, how many followers do you have?
Yeah.
Go into a casting agency. Yeah. And do you have your own material?
It's all really?
About, do you have your own material?
Yeah. Oh, I haven't heard that. I can't wait. I'm waiting for that.
Well, Michael says
maybe guys, they ask that. I don't know.
No.
I haven't heard it.
No. It's not. Michael says it too, I think. I may have had to edit it out, but because he and I just went on and on and on. But it is, oh gosh, Michael is just one of the best people ever. And so funny. But it is about, do you have your own material and how many followers do you have? He said, actually, agents and casting directors want to know that.
Yeah.
They hire you.
Definitely the follower thing I've come up against, and I've heard about, and I know I'm failing at, but I think what changed my life is making the decision, especially as an actress, and is making the decision to create my own work. And to not try to fit into whatever teeny hole there is for women our age, or women in general.
Thank you, darling, for putting me in your category.
Anyone over 21 category is
unless you're Meryl Streep Meryl Streep or Jessica Lange, you know, who they seem to be able to bypass that and continue to get cast.
Right. But
But it is
Meryl even
hard.
talks about the fact that how she had to just be this sensual woman and create this persona and use her feminine wiles to be wanted and like learn.
That was fascinating.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Meryl. That was fabulous.
Thank you.
That's,
I listen, that wasn't Meryl Streep, but she talks about
yeah,
you
no,
know, that we have to be this way to be cast in roles.
it is. It's amazing. But you know, you did exactly what we do our little the pre-call like we did it yesterday. And I said, one of the things about you that I've watched you in other shows, this one in particular, but you seem to get cast in roles where you get to play a myriad of characters. And you just, I said yesterday as a director to you, I said, you just dive in, just feet first, go. You jump in the pool and you have such a good time. You just buy into it authentically. And I just was they can't see you, but I just was watching you going, oh my gosh, your whole body language, everything just changed. And you did, what was the show?
Search
Dave
for
Robbins
Signs of Intelligence. Oh, okay.
Go ahead with yours first. You did that one, Search for Signs.
Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, written by Jane Wagner for Tomlin.
Her partner, her wife.
Yes, her partner, wife, and
brilliant show. And I remember
Lily
her Tony
Tomlin,
speech. Did you ever see Lily's Tony speech for that show?
For that, I don't know if I ever saw her Tony
probably
speech.
so young you don't remember, but go back and watch it.
Okay.
Because she thanks Jane, and it's kind of before people were really kind of out of the closet, and definitely not women. But she thanks everybody from like the back of the house and the ushers. She knew people's names, and it is the most gracious, beautiful thank you speech to everybody. So go back and watch it, but you were amazing in that. And I'm just going to say it right now. If anybody's in Richmond and you're a critic, y'all blew it by not giving her the Best Actress Award that year, because you were brilliant. And then you did the one Dave Robbins wrote.
Sam and Carol,
Sam and Carol, right? Sam and Carol, who I knew because we were both from Stanston. And
David Robbins, New York Times bestselling author.
Yes, and really amazing. And just, you know, turns out all of these books and plays and just
he is prolific, man.
Crazy.
That guy is a writing fool.
He is a writing fool, and there's no stopping him. I tell you what, those Robbins boys, it's Dave and Doug, and there's one more, and it starts with a D. And because I know that, because there is Diana, Donna, Dawn, and Denise in my family, and their family was the same. And
we're all E's in my family. Edward, Ellie, Edward, and Eva.
Isn't that funny? I'm number 3, and they were actually, believe it or not, my parents were going to name me. Okay, you're all going to hear this. I'm just going to say it out loud.
Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is. We're going to hear.
Drum roll, please. Dorcas. She was Dorcas, and it's not like D-O-R-K. It's D-O-R-C-A-S. And my mother loved this character in the Bible. Let's talk about the Quran. Let's talk about the Bible. My mother loved this character because she, I think, sewed clothes for Jesus or something. She was a seamstress. And my 2 older sisters, who I love and adore, Diana and Donna, saved me from a life of being called Dorcas. And I got this beautiful name, Dawn Anita Westbrook, which I love my name, Dawn. But if they had named me Dorcas, and it is a hysterical story. And so when I tell that, people are like, oh my God, Dorcas, really?
I suddenly love your mother a little bit more, though. Dorcas. That's amazing. And I'm so glad that you were spared.
Thank you. I am.
But holy mackerel, that name needs to be heard more in our ears. That needs to be in a play. It needs to be in a movie.
Well, it's now in a podcast, darling.
Okay. It's in a podcast. Good start.
So anyway, but yeah, they were going to name me Dorcas. So 4 Ds. And I know his family where there were 3 sons. And I'm sorry, guys, I can't remember the third, but I think he's a little bit older. But Dave and Doug. Doug was a year older than I was, but they went to Highland Springs High School and we went to Verona High School, and they just were go-getters from the get-start. And I remembered their parents. And, you know, while we're talking about race and Muslim, might as well just say this too. I told you this yesterday. And I think after I saw the show, they lived in Sanston, and we're talking Southern Baptist. They were the only Jews at the Sanston pool. Now, I cannot believe that I lived, Eva, during a time where it was even given a head nod that they would even be, it would be brought to the board, can they join? But Sam and Carol were exactly what you were in that show. They were go-getters. They made no apologies. They were who they were, and hell if they weren't going to be members. And they were, I mean, we were wasp, cool, they're all whites and no one ethnic. Now that's totally changed, of course, but I lived during a time where that actually happened.
Well, it still does. It's still happening.
Oh,
maybe not in Sanston, but it's still happening other places. And
it's
I'm
crazy.
wondering, I wonder how they managed to get in there. Is it because they're big, tall presence and they're just like, the boys are big, like they're all like over 6 feet.
And the father,
How
was.
did they manage to make their presence known?
I don't know, but I'm going to ask them.
Yeah, you should.
I will actually,
David on this podcast.
I will do that. I will do that, and I will put it on the Facebook page and get the answer to that, because I'll never forget it. And I remember my mother, of course, because she thought, Jews were the chosen ones, right? Jesus was a Jew, but she thought that if she had any regret in her life, it was being born a Christian, because what she really wanted to be was a Jew that was converted, because she thought that was like the pinnacle. If you were a converted Jew, you were really the chosen, and you chose correctly. I mean, isn't that amazing?
Wow.
It's crazy. I mean, that's what I came from. Now, I'm now a Episcopalian. I'm an Episcopal. I moved past the Baptist church. It became a little too conservative for this little theater gal. But so let's move on to talking about where you are right now. You're physically in Florida. Mm-hmm. And we talked, you broached this yesterday. I didn't tell you on purpose that I was going to ask you this, but I really want people to get an honest answer. I want us to, because this podcast was written about the craft of acting, the art of directing, and embracing the process of this crazy career in the theater. Yeah. Now, what happened to me at a point in my life, I always said when I moved to New York, stop having fun with this one thing that gives me nothing other than enjoyment. You certainly don't do it for the money. I'm going to stop. Okay. But I stopped. I pulled out for 12 years because I realized, and I had to actually say out loud, theater is not giving me back what I'm putting into it. It's not putting back into my wallet. It's not giving me a retirement program. The only thing that I really had to go off of was my ego boost if I got cast or if I was asked to come back, And I just thought, I saw my friends that were like turning 30 and they had houses and children and they had retirement 401ks. And I thought, I really need to be smart about this. And it wasn't that I didn't feel successful. It was just that I had to make the choice because theater is just it's so difficult to make a living. So I could tell from your voice yesterday that you were in a place of maybe not really, and right now we all are, because it is a very sad time. Jason Marks today from Richmond was posting, and people were reposting about, hug an artist today because we are at a really difficult place. And all of us are dealing with this, COVID and the quarantine. We're dealing with the protests, Black Lives Matter. We've got all of these balls in the air that we're juggling, right? And I could and I know your husband's away, Scott Wichman, Mr. Star here in Richmond, who I've worked with and is brilliant, but he's also, he joined the Navy, right?
Yep, he's been in the Navy since he was 34. He's deployed with the COVID-19 response team with the U.S. Navy. He's a mass communication specialist. So essentially he's a journalist. Okay. So he is writing about how the U.S. Navy is supporting the Italians and how the Italians are supporting the U.S. Navy right now. So
wow. I know he was either up for an artsy.
Yes.
About the theater, and he had to do a speech that was, like they do on the Oscars, like if they're on location, like in a different country. And Scott had to be, beamed in to, do his thank yous for winning. But you guys, he is amazing. And Michael, who was week 2, Michael came and saw Scapino that I directed. And I did not cast Scott. Scott had already gone to, I think, Bruce Miller and said he wanted to do this play. And so I was brought on to direct it. but I had never worked with Scott. I had only seen him. And I know he's a very smart actor. He is also a director, and he knows his stuff. And I knew that I needed to be confident in working with him, that there was no way that if I even show any bit of, oh my goodness, I'm scared of you, he was going to eat me alive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you better know your stuff if you're going to be directing Scott.
Yeah,
I mean, if I was directing Scott, I'd be shaking in my shoes.
He never made me feel like I was shaking in my shoes. He
Good.
always was nothing but, he sometimes, when he's working comic bits, he kind of, as a director, I do this to myself too, you kind of self-sabotage. You watch yourself from above or behind in the back of the house, and you don't really live in the moment. You're thinking about how does this look and what's the comic timing. And sometimes he gets himself turned up into a frenzy of being upset, and you just have to sit back and let him work it out and go, do you need anything? Do you need any help, or do you want to just run it again? He goes, no, you just need to run it again. And he gets in this tunnel. He gets in this place of, and if you work with really talented people, such as yourself or Scott, or, Michael was talking about working with Bernadette Peters and all of these, you have to allow.
Thank you for putting me in that category.
Oh, honey, you are.
Thank you so much.
You just are, Donna. You are. And you have to just allow people that, and again, this podcast is about process, right? So everybody's got their own. And I knew that he just needed time, and to go in there and kind of try to tinker with it would do nothing but just upset him more. So I just let him go. And then at the end I'd go, do you want to work? Nope, I'm good. Okay.
That's great. That's what I do at home. That's what we do at home too. Do you need anything?
He says, actually, you imitate him in your show about how the process that you were working on. And how was he during this time? You were like tunneled in my chair and writing.
So supportive, like ridiculous, incredible, supportive husband. I mean, I've never had this in a man before. I was 37 when I was married, so I wasn't a kid. And every single other man I've ever dated has had issues with being an actor and performance, and they don't really get it. They're first kind of enchanted and intrigued and excited. But I've never had anyone who is so supportive and who gets it and who says, go further. And our first year of marriage, I left for, 2 months.
Right. So you've heard it from the horse's mouth. It's the secret to a good marriage is be gone for half the year.
Both of us, we are either gone through theater, we're gone through the Navy, he's gone.
Right.
And we have complete autonomy and support each other in having a big life outside of this crazy career.
Yep.
And also go big in this career and then come home.
Yeah. I actually think that does help. My husband and I married later. I was married once before, but Carl and I both have our own lives. And I think too, as a parent, it's also good to keep your life going, because those kids, they leave and they're gone at 18. They go to college, or even Sydney's at 16. And she's just gone. Once they start driving, you never see him again. And, but so he was in Naples, and he actually posted something about, I played Scapino like 3 times and I'm here, look at these pictures. And he looked so happy, posting. And I felt honored that he was, mentioned the show. But, so you're in Florida. You grew up in Philly, Jersey, you were a Northerner. Yeah.
I am a Northerner. I'm a Yankee. I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and then raised mostly outside of Philly. Mm-hmm. And then a week after high school, I was in New York, and I went to the American Musical and Dramatic Academy.
AMDA, right?
Yep, I went to AMDA, and then I got my BFA. Then I started working, pretty shortly after that. And stayed in New York and just would sublet my apartment. I didn't work a lot in New York. I never could really book the big gigs.
That's the thing. You live there to do the good auditions, and then you're out. Right. That's why I was like, I can't keep paying for this apartment and be gone the majority of the time. I loved living there, and I'm so glad I lived there. I was in my late 20s and early 30s, and I made the choice in my early 30s to come back to Richmond because I was getting so many offers, and there was a lot of film and TV that was happening here back in the early 1990s. And so I came back and I loved it, but boy, I loved my time there too. But you book outside of the city and you're never there, right?
Yeah. So that's that's what I mostly did, was book once in a while, a reading or a small show in New York City and off Broadway.
Showcases.
Showcases. And then once in a while, a commercial or TV gig I would book in New York, and then I'd leave again.
Yeah.
So,
but you were making a living, and that's kind of what's expected. And I realized that the transient, I said this to you yesterday, but the transient lifestyle or the life of the nomadic artist was not for me. I was always struggling with, I'm 50-50. I'm a homebody. I love to cook. I love to go to Pole Green Market and get that call today. They got fresh blackberries yet? Nope, because I want to make a cobbler. And
wait, you have a market calling you? Or
no, I called them.
That's amazing.
I called them. I was like Pole Green Market and Barry's Produce on 301. And I just loved, one of the things I did love about acting was when I would drive through the countryside, seeing, I love the city, but I really love like shabby chic and country, and cozy is my favorite word. If we're talking, do you have a favorite word? Cozy is mine.
I do not have a
That's okay.
Word.
Scott.
I'll think about it.
It's Scott.
Sure.
Yeah, sure it is. Mine is Carl. Mine's
Since
Carl.
we're being recorded, I will agree.
You're so funny. But your sister and brother were in the business, you said. And yeah. And you also, I want to talk about, we talked about method a little bit, and I just want to tap on this. You studied with someone very interesting. I know some stories of people who worked with him on the set, but tell people who you studied with.
I studied with Vincent D'Onofrio. I was very lucky, actor, character actor guy, incredible teacher, coach, mentor, and actor on TV, film.
And tell people what show he has. It's his show.
Well, he was Law and Order: Criminal Intent was his many years he was on that. He was Gorin on that.
The lead.
So, yep. But one of his most famous that people still talk about is Full Metal Jacket, when he was Sergeant Pyle. He was the one that killed himself. And and then of course Men in Black, he was the Bug. And recently he was on Daredevil. He was the Kingpin on Daredevil. So he's really just worked consistently. And what's so cool is that he's a chameleon. And I was so lucky. I was doing a show I was doing in regional theater, and this guy I was doing Footloose. I was a musical theater girl for a long time.
Who were you in Footloose?
I've done Footloose twice. I think that's
really?
I was Earlene and Irene. So it was a two-part. I played two. So one of the girls said do 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 do, and then Early. I was I don't know. I was.
Oh, see, there you go again.
Yeah. That was actually a different one where I was the one in the diner where I was saying I was the one you can't stop singing and dancing. I was always playing old ladies. People never knew what to do with me. Make her an old lady.
You are definitely. I mean, I buy it. And you said that he's very method, right? So you said something funny about. I think I did 2 years of, how to smell an orange or something like that.
Yes. So I don't usually talk about that I'm a method actor.
I don't either.
I just don't. But he did teach me old school Dinosaur, Stanislavski, and Lee Strasberg, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so we sat in a chair, and I got to sit in a chair and
did you feel
relaxation.
I'm feeling nothing. I'm feeling nothing.
And everybody else in the class, he let progress. And I was like, come on, man.
Were you stuck in the chair smelling the orange?
I was.
You were the real life Morales.
For 7 years, 7 months. It felt like 7 years. He just kept me in there smelling the coffee cup and smelling the orange. And I smelled it. I tasted, but I'm so glad he was so tough on me.
Mm-hmm.
I think because he saw that I wanted it so badly, this career.
Right.
And he knew that having a relaxation technique would change my life and make me a better actor. And to this day, a upright chair is what I use. I wrote a play called In My Chair.
In My Chair.
Clayton Satterfield, she directed me in The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life.
I'm hoping she's going to be on here. I'm having her
Oh,
husband,
good.
too, Rusty Wilson. Yeah,
You
she's
should.
an amazing director and actress too. But
Incredible.
yeah.
She's incredible, but she always says, Eva has a weird thing with chairs. She's got to have her chair, but I have to have a chair backstage always. That's where I do my relaxation.
That's so funny because I know Anna, who is a good friend of hers, Anna Johnson, always says, Dawn, you got to have a purse. I always feel like what my character carries in their purse.
Oh, you got to have a chair, a purse on stage?
Well, whatever. If I
okay.
carry a purse or if I have a backpack or whatever, I fill it myself. And I talk to the props person, and I'm very involved in what I have on to wear, and what I use as props. And so anybody that casts me, or they know that I'm going to have a lot of say in how it feels, because I don't like, one of the things about commercial work that I hate is wearing my own clothes. I don't like wearing Dawn clothes. I want to feel totally different. I did Grand Concourse by Heidi Schreck about 2-3 years ago with Theater Lab, and it's one of those things where they said, and there's so many props. She's cooking. It's her kitchen. She's a nun that, has a soup kitchen. And if I were to die tomorrow and this podcast stopped at week 6 or 7, learn this: never trust anyone to preset your props.
No way. Even
on Broadway. Always go just check. I mean, you've got people that are doing that, but you don't need to do them, but always do a check. At 7, your last call before the house opens, check your props. And definitely, oh my God, if it's something that is used on stage, do not trust somebody else. So,
well, my first job, I auditioned and I got in New York was an ASM job. So I didn't get the part, but they offered me the ASM at an Equity Theater, so assistant stage manager. And I was fired from it. I was put on probation.
Why?
And fired because I was terrible, because I sucked at setting props. I was too interested in being on stage, and these Broadway stars. I mean, Janie Jones, who is one of the most incredible Broadway stars. She works all the time. She's one of the most incredible actors.
This story
I messed up her props. I cringe when I think about this. My first job, like, I blew it all the time. The stage manager would talk to me, the theater would talk to me. I couldn't get it together. And I realized I can never be backstage because I can't set props.
You didn't draw a picture or have a preset?
Of course they did. It was an Equity Theater. I still didn't do it. I couldn't.
What were you doing at that time?
I was just thinking about being on stage, thinking they're going to put me on. It was Blues in the Night, all African American. But I thought, if somebody goes out, I'm going to go on. Like, I knew all the songs. I was too worried. Like, thank God they never put me on stage in the Blues in the Night. But I thought,
you were white. You're Italian.
I know.
You're gonna you can't do the. Oh my God,
It was really just like they're tricking me into being as ASM, and they're giving me the quote unquote understudy position. But I was terrible. So don't trust, especially if there's an actor doing your props.
Right. Ask them, are you an actor or are you actually a techie or a stage manager? It's like my husband always says, he's an anesthesiologist, and he says, July is when all of the new medical students come in and the residents change into actually kind of running the show. And he always asks before, if you're in the emergency room or you're going to have surgery, how long have you been on call and how many years? But Vincent,
yes, Vincent.
Yeah,
I hope he hears this podcast. Thank you.
I do too. Hey, Vincent, if you hear this, and maybe you can send it to him, maybe I would love to have you on. Michael Mastro did it. I'm going to have Stephanie Zimbalist coming up, and I hope to get Mario Cantone and Steven Skybell. Yes, I know. I've got some, Frank Wood, who won the Tony for Sideman. I've got him coming on in a couple of weeks. So great. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so let's move on. We've talked kind of about a life in the theater, and I know that you are, I also gathered from talking to you yesterday, and you're so sweet, that, we're all kind of struggling with theater and, finding your authentic artist. And I know you've kind of been doing a lot of quiet mindfulness through this period, right? Isn't that what you said? Right?
Yeah.
And that's important. And I know many of artists are struggling right now. And like I said, Jason Marks posted that today, hug an artist because we're going through a hard time. How your play In My Chair is also very, geared towards women and women's rights. And men, definitely, I saw men in the audience, they loved it too. It's not just for women. But talk to me about your journey as not just an actress and a writer, but what you feel, what this show has kind of catapulted you into as far as politics and other things. Tell the listeners about that, would you?
Sure. Well, it's what I tell the young people getting into this field now. What I wish I knew when I was young, but I guess you can't know it until you get here, is find a passion of yours, find a cause that you feel strongly about, and make art about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally came to that conclusion to do that. So finding a cause, women's rights and women activism and women empowerment, and getting women to speak up. It's only because I still struggled with these issues. Educated American free woman, and yet I still struggle with self-acceptance. I still struggle with wanting to be a certain weight of judgment. We're still not paid equal amounts. So I found a cause that I felt deeply and strongly about, and I started creating art about it. And by doing that, it changed my life, and being really honest about it, and also telling my own story. And when you do that, it sounds like the easiest thing in the world. Like, just tell your own story. You want to be successful, tell your own story. But it's kind of true if you go there.
And it's hard to do sometimes. People don't really want to do the introspection, and they don't really want to do the work. And it's time consuming. It becomes a huge part of, I mean, it is, you can just go the easy route and just let other people continue to cast you, and, just go to the auditions and, figure things out. But you can also, you need to be, I think, the most successful people that I know. And I'm having, I'm doing local celebrities, if you will, or local people that are true to the craft. And then people that are kind of more nationally known, television, whatever. If you can be genuinely know who you are, and it's not about having an ulterior motive. It's like just really being true when you ask. I know when I would leave auditions, I'm telling this too, I've never said this to anybody before, but
say it, Dawn.
I'm going to say it because I hope it helps somebody and use it. It sometimes, I don't think it ever got me cast, but it was genuine. I truly meant it when I would leave an audition, because I'm also a director. I would say, you know what, thank you so much. I hope you find who you're looking for. And sometimes they'll like laugh, and I'll go, yeah, I hope it's me. But if it's not, and I said, really, truly, I do. I hope you really get what you're looking for. And thank you so much. And that's how I leave the room. And I truly mean it, because it's not just, and if it's not genuine, if you don't really feel it, don't say it, because they'll know it right away.
Right.
But you need to find out who you are authentically and be comfortable in who you are,
That's good that you have something when you leave the room. I've got a few different things. Sometimes I'll say something, but that's cool. It's always that question of what do you do when you leave the room after they say thank you? Do you drop something in as you're walking out?
And now
some of those things I think have actually booked me a job, if it is genuine or funny or in the moment.
Always definitely in the moment. I mean, as a director, I want to see people who know how to handle things that go wrong. Like if there's a sound outside the room, or, it's like, oh, okay, they're going to use that, or how do they know? Because definitely in theater, you want to make sure you're getting people who know how to handle themselves in the moment, because it's not film, it's not TV. You can't go back and refix it to make it perfect. They can do that in edit.
Yeah.
In theater, you better know how to do it, right? So
that's what I love about it.
It is. And I don't like improv, but I do love living in the moment. And so as we move, towards this year of cancellations, you said yesterday that you were having to move towards, had already kind of signed some retainers, and you had speaking engagements, and we've now moved to like Zoom meetings, go-to meeting on, Google. How are you finding yourself trying to navigate? Because I know you're also your own manager, your own scheduler, your own producer. Talk to me about the time that you've had to invest as theater has had to change since March.
Well, I do feel like one of the lucky ones, because doing talks and doing these shows and experiences and in live person event, transferred a lot of this work into corporate America. I've transferred into political events. So I'm lucky because corporate America is still going, you know. So some of those events have shifted to online conventions. Some of the conventions I do are now doing it online, and they're shifting. So I have to shift. So getting better sound, getting great lighting.
Do you have a ring light? That's what everybody has said. If you've listened to any of the podcasts, everybody's like, know how to be your own DP, get Zoom, get GoToMeeting, have a ring light, have a good, headset, all that.
That's it. I have it all. And I have it all in Richmond where I am, but I had to reorder a lot of it while I'm here because I just figured I'm going to stay. So I ordered a bunch and just of new things.
How wonderful though that you have that, and that you're finding ways to use your talent for the better good. And that's actually something you said yesterday. So I can't take credit for that quote. That's something you said yesterday, and I'm just saying it again.
Thank you. And again, I think that better good. I'm trying to do that in life. I think I'm trying to improve myself. I've got a lot of work to do for myself, and I find it interesting to do this work by creating art about it. And when others see it, maybe it reflects something about themselves. And I think,
one of the things that also too, a takeaway from your show, I remember just not wanting you to go away. I remember you taking your bows and just the audience just immediately boom to their feet. And I knew that was going to happen. But I didn't want you to go away, and I wanted there to be a Q&A, like have somebody there that could like ask, because you get so to the root of women's issues and really being true to who we are. And all of us were like ready to talk. And I think I wrote to you a Facebook post like the next morning, and I went, look, I know you are like, people are trying to kiss the hem of your garment, and I don't expect you to answer this, but I know you're getting barraged by emails and all of that. But I just want you to know that, it is such a tour de force, and what you've created is so special. And what I loved, I looked around, and I'm like looking at everybody felt that you were talking to them individually. And that is huge to be able to do that in a show. You got to everybody's heart. And one of the other moments that I remember, and we're talking about living in the moment. And then I'm going to ask you two questions. One is, what is beauty to you? Because I remember sitting there thinking, what is beauty to me? What does beauty mean? Because you talk about beauty. Beauty is a word that's used a lot in your script. I was going to ask you a question. There was one moment in the show, the night that I was there. Okay. So here is the first thing that I was going to talk about. You cut out, you play all these, you, Eva, the narrator, storyteller.
Yep.
Then you are also someone who plays lots of different characters. You just embody these characters. They just drop in and you go. Wow, I don't know why. Maybe it was just the shift of lights. Lisa Rothy, who was your director and who I actually have talked to over the last couple of weeks, and who I'm trying to get on because she's friends with Michael Mastro. And I introduced myself. She was there that night that I saw your show, and I was like, who directed this? I got to talk. Just thought it flowed so well, I was so glad that she was there. And Lisa, if you're listening, cannot wait to have you on, and hope your wife is doing okay. Yeah. And then there's a time where you actually, oh my God, I can feel my blood pressure going up and my palms starting to sweat. You actually asked to bring the lights up, and you start talking to the audience. Now, that is something that you've got to have guts. If you're listening in the audience, you got to have guts to do this as a performer, because I talked to Mark Delabar, and we were talking about improv, and oh my God, I love comedy. I love delivering lines that a playwright has written. David Lindsay-Bear is hysterical. Ken Ludwig, give me any of those lines. That's fine. Do not make me improv. I hate it, hate it, hate it. And one of the things that you did so beautifully, and the night that I was there, and I'm going to bring this up, I told you I was going to bring this up because I was with a friend sitting beside her in the theater, and we had our wine, and we were watching you, and the lights came up, and
so glad you had your wine.
I did. I had my wine. My Chardonnay. Everybody thinks I'm a lush. I'm like an alky, but I'm not.
No, that's the best part. Going to the theater, having a glass of wine, and like, it's all about the women having wine in my shows.
Little black box theater. It was fabulous.
Good.
But I'm sitting there, and the lights came up. And as a performer, every now and then I'll watch a show. Most of the time I read scripts as a director, not as an actor, unless they send it to me and they say, look at a role. But I usually read as a director, but when the lights go on, or there's a moment where the actor, I go, oh God, I immediately start feeling how the actor feels. My heart starts to palpate. I have a physiological reaction.
Yeah.
And you actually asked the lights to come up because you were going to talk to the audience. And that night that I was there, you ask a couple of questions and you ask the women in the audience you talk about leadership, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of women don't feel empowered to be leaders. Now, I have to say, I have never had that problem. It was actually, I was marked in the 5th grade. Clink.
Cheers to
cheers,
you.
Cheers, cheers, bing, bing. In the 5th grade, I got a mark on my report card, and it was not a good mark. It was not a good mark. It said I didn't work well with others. Now, I am being very honest in this podcast, but I'm not going to apologize for being a leader. I am never going to apologize for being a strong woman. I'm never going to apologize, for that. I'm not aggressive. I'm assertive, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And a lot of people don't know how to deal with women like that, right? So
I think most of us do. Most of us don't. Most of us do not. And it's an ongoing challenge for all of us, I think. Even if we are, quote unquote, empowered and supportive of women, I think we still struggle with it.
What is it that you ask the audience? You say you want women to say, raise their hand. Do you feel like a leader or something like that?
Yeah. So I say, is there anyone in the audience who ever thought about running for office? That's the first question. And then usually it's like nobody. And I'm standing there sweating, and I know probably fellow actors in the audience are like, oh my God, poor thing.
Right.
And then I would say, how about asking to be paid what you're worth? And then somebody eventually is going to stand up. A woman is going to stand up. How about just claiming that word leader? For a woman, I think, to say, I'm a leader,
right,
like still feels like a fraud complex to me. I still have a fraud complex about saying like, oh, I am a leader,
right. Women don't really buy
leadership.
Into it.
I don't, it's very hard for me to think that I'm a leader. So that's why I was like, I think we just need to claim the word, especially when I went around the world. It started off in Nevis, and I asked the audience what's the first word or name for a woman who speaks up? And the first word
bossy.
Everywhere I heard around the world was not bossy. It was another B word.
Oh.
The other B word, bitch. You might have to bleep that out.
No, I don't. I just put down that it's got content.
Yeah, we've got content. Got adult content,
baby. So yeah, and I remember
everywhere said that B word first was the bitch word.
But
and
in my head, I thought it was bossy. I didn't know that it was B.
Well, that's another that would come next. The bossy, uppity, shrill.
Shrew.
Big for her britches, elite. So all of these words would come up, but it was always bitch first.
Amazing.
Every place in the entire world except Ireland. Ireland's the only one where I asked Ireland, and they were like, I was like, what's the first word or name for a woman who speaks up? And I heard Countess Markowitz, Grace O'Malley, Pirate Queen. I was like, wait, what? What are you saying? This is not the B word. I don't understand.
Oh my God.
But that's why I put it in the show, is because like I think like the first word we hear for men of a first word for a man who speaks up in public, I would ask, and I would constantly hear sharpshooter,
right.
shooter.
Right.
So that's why I put it in the show, because I was like, well, let me just go to this audience. And
I loved it. And I'm sure every night you got different, this is that improv and being able to go with it. But what made me grab my friend's knee was, and as actors, directors, when we are in an audience and when you're in a black box and the lights go up, know that actor. And if you're a local, they can see you. So you don't want to do poker face. You have to just make sure that you are poker face, and you're not going to give any signals like, oh God, this sucks, or, oh, I wish I feel for you. So
you mean you as an audience member are thinking that you have to put on a very supportive,
absolutely, always. I will never do anything otherwise, because and that's hard for me, because in real life I'm not really a very good kind of like social actor. you pretty much know where you stand with me all the time. But when I'm in a theater, I know that I'm going to have my best foot forward. I'm going to really listen, and I'm going to sit up in my chair and I'm going to listen. Yeah. But there was, I don't remember what the question was, but I know you didn't get a response on who wants to run for office but anyway, somehow you chose a woman who was like in the row behind me, right to my left, and she was up against the wall. And she stood up, and as soon as she started to speak, bless her heart, as we say down south, bless her heart, it was obvious that I thought at first she was just nervous. And I thought, oh, I wish you hadn't raised your hand. But she was one of those who was going to raise her hand. I don't know exactly what the issue was, but she was uncomfortable, but yet continued to raise her hand, like when you would ask things. And somehow
I don't pick on anybody who doesn't raise their hand.
No. And she did, and she was right there. And you could tell the audience was starting to kind of, with her answer, like you had to keep feeding her, and she wasn't really answering the question. And she like went to a different answer. Like she wasn't even asking. So I grabbed my friend's knee, and
so she just kind of started talking and like,
yeah. And it was making the audience uncomfortable. It was getting to that place of uncomfortability, but you got it at like, it was that curve, right? She started, you let her go, and you're like, yeah. And then
I love a little bit of uncomfortableness.
Absolutely.
Like, I love that. So I let it go.
You did, but let me tell you what, you were a champ. You pulled it back in exactly at the moment that it should have been. You reined it back in, and you let the audience know, I'm in control of this. We are good. We're fine. And you let her go again. And then when it happened again, you were like, okay, good. So that's great. So, you're a leader, blah, blah, blah. And then you went immediately to someone else, and we were able to kind of, kind of sit back in our seats and relax a little bit. But you were such a champ at being able to not make her feel bad. You didn't do that at all. You did the antithesis of that. You made her feel empowered. And I don't know how in the hell you did that, but you did it. And yes, see, the dog agrees.
She agrees.
She does. Agrees. And I just have to, I wanted other people to know that I witnessed that firsthand. And man, I tell you what, if I get a show that you are right for, you are in there, baby, because I want to direct you so bad, but I also want to be on stage with you one of these days.
Be directed by you.
Well, I want to be directed by you, and only directed by you.
I will say that's what I love to do most. I love in the moment experiences, these like authentic connection moments where we're all feeling something and the audience is all saying, we support you as a leader. And there's nothing more exciting to me than these moments that happen with the audience.
Could tell, it was almost like you were a psychiatrist and we were having like therapy. And I think that was part of it. But what you said is, you make them say, I'm a leader. And then the audience is saying, we support you.
Right. And when do we hear that? When do we hear an entire group of people? I mean, if I had time, I'd do it all night, 100 times each. Like every single person in the audience has to hear and see us point and look you in the eye and say, we support you. It's so interesting. Very often after a show or after an event that I do, a woman will come up to me and they'll say, I really needed to say it. I'm a leader. Some people need to say it. Some people need to just hear it. Like, I believe I'm a leader, but I've never heard it from an entire group of people to say that we support you over and over. Because you could say it once and it's like, but then once you say it a second time and a third time and a fourth, it's effective.
It's really effective. And the audience was doing that for her, and you let them keep going and doing that. And I hope that the takeaway for her was that she felt that, because it was true. The audience was like, we support you. And you're like, oh, I'm a leader. And she was very, I'm a leader. She didn't really buy into it. I'm a leader. And as the audience was going, we support you. I'm a leader. We support you. I'm a leader. Louder. You were making her, come out of her shell. And it was actually really beautiful to watch and be there. So, but man, oh man, did you handle that like a champ, girlfriend. So I just got to tell you that. The other thing that as I'm aging, I'm 57, and I love getting older. I hope my mother died at the age I am right now. She died of ovarian cancer at 57. Gosh. Turning 57 was difficult for me, but I also embrace it because my father lived to 95. He died last year in September. So it's beautiful getting older. And kind of you heard like women in interviews like Meryl Streep or these women going, you know, I really needed to get older to realize I really kind of don't give a fuck anymore. I don't care what people really think. I kind of just am who I am, and you can either accept it or you cannot. I am who I am. And my best friend, Martha Hill Newell, who Scott knows, your husband, your wife. I need a wife, right? Your
all
husband,
of the above.
right? Scott, you're a wonderful husband, but for right now, you're her wife. Anyway, Martha Hill Newell, who was my best friend, she was 40 years my senior, and I haven't had a chance to talk about her. She was never married. She saw her first show at age 10. She took the train up to New York with her father, who was a businessman who lived in the south side of Richmond. And he would come home and talk about all of these shows that he would see on Broadway and all these wonderful shows. And her first show was Showboat.
Wow.
And she talks about seeing that show, and it was transformative for her. And she got addicted to New York. And loved it. And so she became a playwright and moved to New York. She always had a job. She went to William and Mary undergrad, and then VCU as getting her master's, but moved to New York and lived there for years, and just was a theater fanatic. And like I stated, you know, in the beginning of this, you know, noble thespians and my happy group of theater trolls. She was a theater troll. I mean, in a good way, not like trolling like the internet, just trolling like a hard worker and in there to do it. And she just loved it. And she was not, you know, she hated having pictures taken of herself. She never felt beautiful, but she was the most beautiful soul I have ever known in my entire life. And I'm so lucky that I got to know her. And she was just, she made me feel beautiful at a time I had just gotten divorced and I was out of theater. And her love for theater brought it back for me. She would tell limericks. She knew every nasty limerick and could drink scotch like a sailor. You know, she could drink people. So I was her friend. And people would ask me if I go to a party, where's Martha? So I started realizing I had to take her with me. This is before I got married to Carl. And so I went, Martha, I went to a party last night and they wanted to know where you were. So I just realized that she was like who I had to take, and I would be popular when I got there because I had Martha on my arm. And rest in peace, and love her. And man, I can't wait to see her again. And I'm sure she's holding court, telling funny jokes around the ottoman, you know, at the great party up above and beyond. But she was beautiful to me. Yeah. And so when you're talking, I'm going to get verklempt actually a little bit.
Please do.
When you talk about what is beauty, and I realize that it really is not at all who we are on the outside. Like I think of Rebecca Luker, you know, who's now dealing with ALS. She's a beautiful soprano, did Phantom of the Opera, and she's beautiful. And I saw an interview with her, and damn it, she's dealing with ALS, and she is still absolutely one of the most beautiful women I have ever seen. So Rebecca, if you're listening to this, I love you, and you are beautiful. Your soul is, and it just radiates out of who you are, you know? And you just hope that if you're ever challenged in that way, that your soul would be as beautiful, you know? So what is beauty to you, Eva?
I think that is such a beautiful thing that you said about beauty. And I think I feel very similar. I think that beauty is a space that people are given, a space to be free. And that freedom of being in that tiny space to just be free in their authentic selves and not worry about what other people are thinking and what weight they are and what intelligent level, how much money they have and what box somebody's putting them in. But they have a freedom of a space, of a box to be their true selves, to just be a mess and to be themselves. And that is true beauty to me.
And you know it when you see it, right? You know, you recognize it as a person. If you see it in other people, you recognize it. And it's not about necessarily being accepted by other people. That's a great thing, but it's about accepting who you are. And if you do that and it's truly genuine, it goes out into the world that way. And this has been probably one of my favorite interviews. You are the first female. Just cannot think of a better person, a better female to have been on as my first female guest. And I cannot thank you enough. And my last question, my first question is, what are we drinking? My last question is, if you were not doing, and if you were not as talented and as you are and had that skill, what do you think you might have done as a career?
Politician or a chef.
Do you like to cook?
Love it. It's my
really?
therapy. Yeah. It's
Now, you're Italian. Do you cook do you like do Italian
completely.
dishes?
My grandfather had a restaurant, Mr. D, an Italian restaurant, one of the first down here in Florida. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, antipasto and all those wonderful, spaghettis and manicottis and okay, all right, girlfriend. So here's the deal. When you come back to Richmond, my ass is going to be sitting in your chair at the table.
I would love that. Anything you want, whatever. Yeah, I make it. Fresh pasta, got it.
I love to cook too. Mine is a little more home cooking, a little more Southern, like I said, comfort, cozy food. But I tell you what, I am going to put my butt in your chair and I am going to let you cook me some linguine and let me have it. I cannot thank you enough for being a guest and for taking your time to, be a part of this new venture that I've started since, trying to get myself off the streets.
You're so great at it.
Thank you so much. But it's just, there's nothing hard in talking to people who are passionate about what they do and who are good at what they do. It's just, it's a treat to talk to people like this. And I wish you the best. I wish Scott the best, and that he gets back safe and sound, and that you are able to get yourselves back up here soon and I can have some of that linguine. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Dawn. This was so much fun.
Well, I think that about does it for this week's podcast. I can't thank you enough for listening. Remember, you can find me on Facebook under ACT and on Instagram and Twitter under ActingPod. Or you can visit my website at www.dawnwestbrook.com and ask questions, give suggestions, and feedback. But for now, as W.C. Fields once said, a man's got to believe in something. So, my noble artist and my happy troop of theater trolls, I do believe I shall have another drink. May the footlights burn bright and your interactions, both on stage and off, be rewarding. Thanks for joining me. I'm Dawn Westbrook, your host, and this is ACT. This week's podcast was sponsored by the Martha Hill Newell Playwrights Fund.